My average monthly income while living in Boston was about $3,100. And of that amount, the most that I've ever spent in a month was
$1 billion.
Just kidding. That was a joke. Hey guys, my name is Mike. Welcome to the channel where I talk about all things related to saving money. And if you're interested in learning how to save more of your money, then first you need to find out where your money is going to. And that's where today's topic comes in. I'm going to be revealing to you the most money I've spent in a month while living in Boston. So my bank has this really cool feature called Spending Tracker, which essentially is a budgeting tool, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It tracks your spending. And so anytime money is leaving my checking account, it is counted as an expense, and it's placed into a generic category, such as bills or entertainment. And then it shows you a fancy chart that reminds you of how undisciplined you are with your spending.
Ouch.
So I thought it might be fun to use this budgeting tool and look back at my previous spending from not too long ago when I used to live in Boston.
Oh, hey guys.
So a few years ago in 2017, I moved from Florida to Boston, Massachusetts. And this is the time period when I was transitioning from the military and getting ready to find my first big boy job as a civilian.
Mailman.
I know moving in general can be quite expensive, but for me, I only had 2 duffel bags, so it really wasn't too bad. And unfortunately, I can't show you guys my spending history from this time period, as my banking history only goes back to 2018. But don't worry, I definitely have quite a few expensive months to show you. So let's start off by pulling up my spending tracker, and we can go through a few months of my transaction history to see how much I've been spending. So here's an overview of the first 6 months of 2018. One thing I really enjoy about this budgeting tool is the bar chart they provide for you. So I'm a very visual person, and when I see something like this, it really helps me understand the numbers a little bit better. We can see here that the dotted line represents my average monthly spending over a 6-month time period. Remember in the beginning of this video when I said my monthly income was around $3,100? Yeah, we can see here that on average, I was spending about 81% of my income each month. Not good. And if you're looking at April and July and wondering how I'm able to spend more than 100% of my income, it's because I did have a savings account during this time period. I remember when I was in the military, I was able to save up about $10,000 for an emergency fund, and then shortly after moving to Boston, that emergency fund soon became the lifestyle inflation fund. So word of advice for everyone watching, figure out a way to live below your means, and whatever you do, do not spend 81% of your income. You are really not doing your future self any favors by doing that. But anyways, let's jump back into the budgeting tool and check out my spending for the remaining 6 months of 2018. So it looks like on average, I spent less each month according to this chart. And I think July of this year was the most expensive month so far, with a total of about $3,800. And one thing I just want to mention here is September of the same year was when I started dating this girl that I met in Boston.
Oh, hey.
And at that time, we would just go out to eat ramen almost every weekend. On a side note, make sure to check out the restaurant that's called Santuka, which is located in Harvard Square or in Back Bay. But anyways, for eating out so often, I was really surprised to see that my spending wasn't as high as I expected for this time period. And moving on to the first 6 months of 2019, wow, it looks like May is the new record holder. So July of 2018 looks to be about $3,800, and now May of 2019 looks to be about $4,600. Wow, I spent way too much money. I wonder what Dave Ramsey would say about this.
Why are you doing this?
And if we look at the average spending, it looks like this time period is about $300 more than the previous year.
Wow.
So I have a feeling that May of 2019 is probably going to be the most expensive month. But there's only a few time periods left before we hit 2021. So let's just go through real quick just to make sure. Okay, in the last 6 months of 2019, we can see that my average monthly spending dropped significantly. It went from about $2,800 to about $1,800, meaning that on average, I spent about $1,000 less each month during this time period. Remember earlier when I mentioned that my girlfriend and I used to go out every weekend to eat ramen together? Well, she ended up taking a job in Texas
Yeehaw.
towards the end of 2019. So no more ramen and no more girlfriend. But at least I was saving money. Alright, if we look at the first 6 months of 2020, it looks like my average monthly spending went down even more. So let's check out the remaining 6 months of the year. Okay, so this amount in August looks ridiculously high, but I forgot to mention one major flaw with this budgeting tool. So anytime money is leaving my checking account, it gets recorded, and that includes when I pay my student loans. And so this $6,500 amount is actually a really big student loan payment. And it doesn't count in this video because I made that payment back when I moved to New York. Remember, the title of this video is gonna be something like, the most money I've spent in a month living in Boston. So based on the last 2+ years of me living in Boston, it looks like the most that I've ever spent in a month was about $4,600, which happened in May of 2019. And that's definitely a lot of money, seeing that my average monthly income is only about $3,100. And so let's pull up my transaction history for that month and see what I was spending my money on. Alright, so here's a fancy pie chart that shows us the month where I spent the most money while living in Boston. And we can see that my bank does a great job of breaking down the different categories of my spending. We have household, travel, entertainment, bills, and transportation. So let's dive a bit deeper and take a look at what I spent on travel for this month. So the reason I wanted to start with this category is because about 19% of my spending for this month came from travel. Remember how I said my girlfriend took a job in Texas? Well, I'm such a nice guy that I flew down to Texas to help her move into her new apartment. And for the trip, I ended up spending about $895 between the cost of the plane ticket and checked bags. And the next category we can take a look at is the household category, which represents about 57% of my spending for this month. And since there's so many transactions that took place in this category, I thought I'd just save you some time and summarize the information. So here's a summary of where I get all my groceries from. And for anyone who's not familiar with the bottom one here, that is a convenience store delivery service that caters primarily to people who get the munchies late at night.
Stop, dude.
If you know, you know. And so the total spending on groceries is going to be about $453. And the next category is basically going to be everything else. I used Chegg to help with some of my homework. I bought a laptop. I used Canva to help design some of the artwork on my YouTube channel. And it looks like my bank reimbursed me for an ATM fee from earlier in the month. So in total, I spent about $1,025. And the only thing that leaves left is my spending from when I took a trip to Texas. So after I bought my plane ticket to Texas, I obviously needed to eat and survive there. So in total for Texas, I spent about $1,210 there. And part of this money was reimbursed by my girlfriend at the time, as we put all of our expenses onto one credit card, and then she just reimbursed me afterwards. But don't worry about this amount because this video is about what I spent in Boston, not Texas. So I won't include this amount in my overall spending. So moving on from the household category, let's take a look at entertainment, which makes up about 13% of my overall spending for this month. So same thing as before, since there's so many transactions, I'm just going to summarize everything for you. So anytime I grabbed a drink with a friend or ate out at a restaurant, it would be recorded in one of these categories. And you can see one of my worst purchases was a $3 Starbucks coffee. You already know that Graham Stephan is not going to like that.
Cut that out. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't care how much you enjoy Starbucks. You cut that out right now.
But in total, I spent about $421. The remaining amount was purchases that I made when I was visiting Texas, so I'm not going to include those in the total. And so that leaves us with only 2 categories left. So let's check out some of my bills for this month, which represent almost 7% of my overall spending. Alright, it looks like this top transaction is from when my phone broke and I had to buy a new one. I usually try to buy the oldest Samsung that's on the market. And if we look at this bottom transaction, it looks like this was the charge for my old data plan. And don't worry, my current data plan is about $35 a month for 3 gigs of data. So I'm definitely saving a little bit of money on my phone bill each month. And that leaves my total spending for this category to be about $317. Next up, I'll show you what I spent on transportation for this month, which represents about 3% of my overall spending. And at the top here, we can see some of the flaws with this budgeting tool. It's counting a 7-Eleven purchase as a transportation expense, which is definitely incorrect. In reality, I was probably trying to buy a granola bar or something. And this one looks like a transaction that was made in Texas, so we're not going to count that. And it looks like I took a Lyft ride for about $17. And at the end here, we can see that I took another Lyft ride. And this bottom transaction is my monthly unlimited pass to ride the local train in Boston, which definitely beats having to deal with all the headaches associated with owning a car. And so in total, I spent about $113 on transportation for this month. And if we revisit this fancy pie chart, then we know that this 4,683 number does not truly represent my spending from this month, as it also includes my spending from when I visited Texas. So if we only counted my spending from when I was physically located in Boston, then that would mean in total, I would have spent $3,224. And just to clarify, this number is including the cost of my plane ticket to Texas. So if we do not include the cost of the plane ticket, then my overall spending for this month would be around $2,329. And if I was only making $3,100 a month, then that would mean that I spent roughly 75% of my income.
That is outrageous.
But thankfully, this 75% number only represents 1 month out of the year and is not my average monthly spending. And if you guys want a better idea of what I'm currently spending my money on, then be sure to check out my other video, which I'll have linked at the top of your screen. This video talks about how I moved in with my parents at the end of 2020 and was able to save almost all of my income. So that wraps up this video. The homework I had for you guys is to log into your bank account today and see if your bank has a similar budgeting tool, just like mine. And if not, you're gonna have to create your own budgeting worksheet using Microsoft Excel. But don't worry, there's plenty of YouTube videos online that can teach you how to do this for free. And if you don't have the time, I know the Etsy website has plenty of budgeting templates that you can download for around $5 each. Remember, if you want to save more of your money, then first, you need to figure out where your money's going to.
Stay frugal, fam.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video. Be sure to hit the subscribe button right above me. And check out my other videos, which I'll have listed on this side of the screen. We'll see you next time, Frugal Fam.